Hi guys, it's the Forgetful Scholar, and let's chat about books. 2 books. So this week we have a tuba might make a very good weapon and choices. So this week I had a great time. So the first book we're going to talk about, What Happens in London, a Julia Quin novel. This is 4 stars. It's FM historical. And this is the second book I've read by Julia Quin, and I'm enjoying their sense of humor. Throughout this book, hence the tuba might make a very good weapon. I think they said murder weapon. I had put in my notes because it was, nope, just a tuba might double as a weapon. Which I thought was hysterical, and I will always remember that when I see this book. So this has to do with Olivia and Harry. Now, Olivia, I enjoyed. She was on outward facing, very proper English nobility lady, where, I don't know why I said lady so weirdly, but where, again with the dog and the scratching of the rug. Okay. So she's a very proper English member of the ton, and you know, her outward face is very cool, very calm, very collected, and inside she makes all these lists like how to get revenge on my twin brother, you know, things like that. And I thought that was kind of fun to see, like, outwardly she seems very proper, very put together, but inwardly she's a very creative, curious person. So I like that. And in the beginning we basically get a little bit of an info dump, but done in a good way. Like I didn't feel overwhelmed with too much information of Harry's childhood, and it wasn't all that good. His father was a drunk, but a jolly drunk, so that's something. His mother was very cool, very not very loving, not very involved in his life. So that is one of the reasons he and Olivia do not like each other when they first, like, he doesn't like her for various reasons. One, that she's been spying on him for a week. But the second is that she kind of, when they're out in this horrible, music, like this family is putting on this music show, which apparently is horrible, but, you know, everybody has to pretend it's not because, you know, it's English, yeah, 1800s nobility, you know what I mean? Anyway, oh yeah, so he thinks that she's cold, and that kind of, you could tell that reminds him of his mother, so you're like, okay, you know, not only was she spying on you, but, you know, you don't like that she seems so removed and uncaring about everything around it. Got it, because we got, like, a huge thing about, like, your childhood issues, so I understand. Harry, I really liked him too. I liked how he's kind of a different hero. Like, okay, so let's go. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. My gabapentin has not kicked in yet, so forgive me. I'm getting a little distracted by my overactive nerves telling me something that is not happening because my leg is not broken. So shut up, nerves. Anyway, Olivia, you know, when we first see her, she doesn't believe the rumors about her neighbor killing his fiance. You know, she thinks her friends are like there's no validity to it. So she's bored and she's curious, so she starts spying on him. And I was like, you know what? Fair enough. Because I think if I had her kind of existence, I'd be bored out of my fucking mind too. Because I mean, no internet, you know what I mean? Like, I will say, I thought it was I was going to say no good books, like no romance novels to read, but that's not necessarily true. And there is like a little, like subplot where there's like this horrible romance novel going around, which I thought was very fun. Anyway, so she gets caught spying by her twin brother, and we see how she kind of reacts to being embarrassed, which, you know, she gets angry. Fair enough. That happens, you know, some people get angry when they get embarrassed. Fair enough, you know? And I liked that she got embarrassed and kind of unreasonable, because it seemed, because she was like that with her brother, you know, so she was like that when Harry kind of confronts her about spying on him, or like in a backhanded, like, kind of way, you know? So it doesn't surprised me that she was like that with Harry as well. And I'm like, okay, good. She's consistent. And it's kind of nice seeing, you know, this gorgeous heroine not being completely perfect. Like, I like those little personality quirks in characters. Harry, I really liked him. I thought he was fascinating, especially since, as someone who was diagnosed with OCD, it was interesting seeing a hero in a romance novel with OCD tendencies. He didn't have the intrusive thoughts, but like not helping, like having to count his steps from one location to another. You know, just not even a conscious thought of counting how many times he had to clean up after his father when his father was on one of his drunken, not tirades, because he was a jolly drunk, but you know, one of his drunken stupors, you know, so like I enjoyed seeing a little bit of that, you know what I mean? So I thought that was interesting. I was like, oh, okay, if he was modern day, he would have OCD, and he's a translator, you know what I mean? Yes, he was in the war, and like we're told he's physically a badass, but I liked how he was more of a cerebral hero than like, I am alpha male, you know what I mean? So I liked that a lot, you know what I mean? I will say the one thing, and this is the only reason it's 4 stars, the one thing I didn't particularly like is that it kind of seemed like the book wasn't sure what they were doing. Like, are they enemies to lovers? Are they friends to lovers? Are, like, what, like, what's going on? Because, like, he's angry that she's spying on him, rightfully so. She's embarrassed and got caught, so she's angry because, hey, you know, people are like that. Some people are like that. So they immediately don't like each other. You know what I mean? And then he's tasked with the War Office, because he works for the War Office, translating, to kind of protect her because this Russian prince is interested in her and they're not sure, you know, what's going on, like if he's a friend or foe. So it's like, watch out for Lady Olivia because she's an earl's daughter and stuff like that. So he makes himself go over and he brings a trashy romance novel that his older sister loves, because he thinks, oh, well, my older sister likes it, so maybe Lady Olivia will like it, you know what I mean? Which is fair enough, I think, especially since they know nothing about each other, you know what I mean? She's like, oh, this is trash, I would rather read the newspaper, at least internally, you know what I mean? And this book, it was a fun little, I really like Julia Quin's humor. Like, this book was hilarious. I thought it was hilarious throughout the whole novel. It was like the side plot, and then, you know, Harry's cousin, who is the typical rank, you know, charming spy type character, he's like obsessed with this book to the point where he puts on an impromptu play about it. And I'm like, that is hysterical. Also, did Sebastian secretly write this book? Like, what's going on there? Which I thought was, and he likes this book so hard that when he's reenacting it, he freaking dislocates his shoulder, which I thought, like, I was like, okay. Like, the humor, this humor hit the sweet spots for me in this book. But yeah, so like, he goes over, and after one conversation and then seeing each other in the ball again, then all of a sudden they're besties, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden they're in love. I did think that was kind of fast. Typically with like enemies to lovers trope, you know, they hate each, or they think they hate each other, but their attraction's so intense they can't help but, like, you know what I mean? So like, and then they catch feelings, that kind of thing. And the friends to lovers, it usually is a little softer kind of roll into love, you know what I mean? So it didn't seem to know what was going on, but I liked the chemistry between the two characters. I liked the characters themselves. I liked the secondary characters. They were so much fun, but they didn't overshadow anything. The Russian prince, like, you didn't know, like, he was an ass. He was an arrogant ass. And like, he had no idea that Harry is fluent in Russian. So like, when he would say gross things to Olivia and then pass them off as like romantic, Henry's like gritting his teeth because he knew exactly what he was saying. So I thought that was fun. I mean, not fun, but like a nice layer to it. The third act completely took me by surprise, because like, I thought the book was winding down, you know what I mean? Olivia and Harry are in love. They do this whole talking through the window, very Shakespearean Romeo and Juliet kind of thing. I thought was cute. Because they're neighbors, you know, I thought it was cute. Also, like, are there no other neighbors around them? Because, like, I just kind of, sometimes I just pictured, like, the neighbor on the other side of, like, one of their houses, just being like, what the hell is going on? What, like, I would be that bitch. I would be sitting by the window and, like, watching this, because, again, no television, no internet, you know what I mean? And, like, books were still for the wealthy, so I probably would have been like, oh, okay. Oh my God, they threw something at you. What did they throw? You know, that would be my telenovela, okay? It would. I'm owning up to it. That would be my telenovela. So every time they talk through it, I was like, well, at least they're giving their neighbor an interesting show. You know what I mean? That's fun. But the third act conflict, I was like, no way. There's like only a chapter left. How? Because third act conflict usually happens in the beginning of the third act, and then like a chapter or two till the end, there's usually the wind down of like happily ever after. You know what I mean? But this was like wham bam, what the fuck just happened? So I was like, oh my gosh, that came out of nowhere. I am intrigued. It is 2:00 in the morning. I am gonna finish this friggin' book, and it's been a while since like I couldn't put a book down. So I really had so much fun with that. So that was a blast. So the second book this week is Marrying Winterborne, Ravenel Book 2 by Lisa Kleypas. And this is Helen and Reese's story. And we got introduced to them heavily in Cold Hearted Rank. This is an FM historical. And this is 5 stars. I like this book from beginning to end. There's no points that dragged for me. I really enjoyed it. So this is choices, because in this Helen story, she finally gets to make her own choices. Because in Cold Hearted Rank, we got a huge bits of Helen and Reese, which I didn't particularly like in that book, because it was supposed to be about Devin and Kathleen, but that's besides the point. I ranted about it last week, so let's move on. Anyway, Helen just doesn't get to make any of her own choices. Like, everybody chooses for her. She's just sort of, because I guess she's easygoing, and she's kind and considerate, people kind of walk all over her. So in this book, she's like, no, I am making choices for myself. I'm going to do this, this, and that. And I was like, you go, Helen, you go. You show people that just because you're shy doesn't mean you're weak. And I really love that. When a book does a shy main character that still has like an internal strength, I love when that's done well, because that's such an interesting character to me. That's such an interesting, because so many people equate strength with like physical strength, but there's a million different types of strength, right? So I really love that. And it was hinted in Cold Hard Rank that Helen is a bastard. I wasn't surprised by that, but the rest, like, going on with that was kind of a surprise. So this book is 2016, so it's been out for a while. So if you don't want to hear spoilers, bye, see you next time. But anyway, so Reese, he's still a little rough around the edges, but we get his POV, and he's just like completely in love with her, and it's really sweet. And the first chapter, you know what I mean? She goes to him at his apartment store by herself, unchaperoned, which is a big no-no back then. And she's like, you know, Kathleen ended our engagement. I didn't want our engagement to end. Because that really bugged me about Cold Hard Rank. Kathleen just sort of chose for Helen. She's like, well, I don't like Reese, so obviously Helen wouldn't like Reese. And I was like, I get that she was, you know, just being big sister about it, but Helen, you know. Anyway, she didn't even talk to Helen about it. But anyway, Helen's like, no, there's been a mistake. Yes, their heart was in the right place, but I didn't want the engagement to end. And basically, which I'm kind of surprised, because Lisa Kleypas, I mean, I haven't read the books where this is done before, but like, they bang, you know? He takes her virginity, so like, he can't So Devon can't stop them from getting married because Devon's kind of angry at him right now, right? And it was her choice, you know. I mean, like, he negotiated with her, and I do like that during their real engagement this time, he learns he can't order her around, like, and he doesn't want to, you know, he wants her opinion and stuff like that. And she learns to speak up more and things like that, which I loved. Like, I loved their romance. I loved all of it. So good. Now, like I said, we knew, like, it was heavily hinted that she was a bastard. From who, I wasn't sure. And then we find out, okay, it was the mom. Okay. Now, we find out that there is a personal enemy of Reese. I don't remember his name. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Reese hates him, and the reason he hates him is valid. You know what I mean? Is valid. This man seduced his best friend's wife, and the best friend was still like, you know, I love you, I want to work it out, I'll raise this baby, as ours. The wife died in childbirth. The husband, so racked with grief, killed himself. And the daughter was given to the man that impregnated his best friend's wife. And Reese blames that man for the whole thing. Which, fair enough. You know, grief, anger, I get it. Especially when you meet this guy. He's such a piece of shit. You're like, yeah, you should hate him. He's horrible. So we know Helen's a bastard. When it turns out her real father is this guy, I was like, oh shit. And this happens like in the middle of the book, you know? And I was like, look at our third act queen. Put it in the second act. I'm so impressed. Which makes sense because the third act because I love Lisa Kleypas' third acts. They're fantastic. So she has a half sister. Now, she also has, you know, the twins are her half-sister and everything like that. But she also has another half-sister that is about 4, right? And the 2 people that know this guy is her father, that are on Helen's side, because, like, obviously the dude knows he's the genetic donor, you know what I mean? But are, like, advising her to keep quiet about it. No one has to know, you know, and I don't remember her name. She's the woman that raised Kathleen. Not her mother, but the woman that raised her, that's like a lady herself. And at first she comes off very hard, very strict, but she has this beautiful speech about like how, you know, their world isn't, the inequality of the female situation in that time period. And it was just such a beautiful speech. And I was like, oh, you know what? I like her. Because, like, I didn't like her before this because I was judging her by, like, modern woman standards. But you know what? She's trying to get these girls the best security she can. You know, they don't have any job skills. You know, they're basically made to be brood mares. And she's trying to get them with, like, the safest she can because she knows this world isn't fair. And I was like, oh man, I like you. I think it's like Lady Beerwick. I'm like, oh man, I misjudged you. I'm sorry. I get where you're coming from now. I understand. You know what I mean? Because her and Pandora just, they just clash. So, you know, so she doesn't tell Reese right away, even though she wants to. And you read the internal conflict and, you know, she already loves Reese and she's like, I'm gonna lose him because of this, so I will tell him, but I'm just saving up all my memories, you know. And like, I'm like, oh, Helen, sweetheart, you know what I mean? You feel for her. And then the third act comes around, so I'm like, holy shit. So throughout this whole thing, and like, you see the engagement, they're going through the engagement, he, you know, he's learning to, well, basically let someone else in his life, and she's learning to find her voice, and it's very sweet. They're very good for each other, you know what I mean? And I love how they put in how the maid, their housekeeper for the Ravenels, is super happy for Helen because she admires Reese and like and it's such a wonderful thing to see, like, the difference, how, like, not Devon or anything like that, but others in the ton kind of see Reese, especially her birth father, the horrible things he says about Reese, and like him coming from like a poor family in Wales and crawling his way to the top, and how he's like an upstart, but like how the working class is like, he's a hero to them. You know what I mean? And I was just like, I thought that was such a fun juxtaposition on the divide with classes and things like that. And I enjoyed that. That was a little bit more depth. I like that. So she finds out her 4-year-old sister was given to an orphanage because the woman that was being paid to take care of her was like, whatever. So she goes with her new bestie, Dr. Gibson, to go get Charity from the orphanage. And then because we're introduced to Dr. Gibson and Ransom in this book, but they don't take over. They're completely secondary. And I was like, that's done well. Makes me intrigued by their characters, doesn't overwhelm the story. Anyway, the story's still very much Reese and Helen. So, that was done really well. And Charity looks exactly like Helen, to the point where Helen knows she takes Charity home, people are going to assume it's her daughter, and she'll lose Reese because she thinks Reese is marrying her just to get higher in society. And in taking Charity home, there will always be whispers behind Reese's back, and she doesn't want to ruin his reputation like that, right? So that's what she decides. So she brings Charity home, and her sisters, Pandora and Cassandra, are like, how can we help? We'll take care of it. I love the siblings Lisa Kleypas does. I really do. Even the bad relationship is so good. So, and Lady I think it's Beerwick, she sees the problem with this. So she calls the real father to Charity, because Charity is Helen's half-sister, to take Charity away. And Helen, and the part that makes her one of my top favorites, is like, screw this. I'm not letting that guy take my little sister. I'm running away. Because I was like, yes, you big sister, you go, She's like, I don't want to ruin Cassandra or Pandora's chances of getting married because this world is not fair, but I will not throw Charity to the wolves. And her genetic donor is a piece of shit. So she runs away. And just like the last part where Reese finds them and the speech he does and how much he loves it, I'm like, oh, they were so cute. Oh, I love this. Like, just gave me happy butterflies, So I really love this. And I will say this week was great because I really needed books to just take me out of my headspace because my pain spike was so bad this week. I was like in the 9s. So I'm so thankful, and I'm so happy that, this channel reminds me, I have to read this week, because sometimes you get in like a headspace and you just don't. And then I wasn't in the headspace. Like, I really did not feel it reading. I was like upset. I was in pain. I was cranky. I was being a bitch, right? And then I started reading these books, and I was like, they took me out of my head. I had a wonderful time smiling. And I was like, you know what? This week reminded me why I love romance novels so much. So there we go. I don't want to, but it's time for me to get back to the real world. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye.